She walked into the restaurant like any other customer, a decorated veteran, proudly wearing her medals, expecting nothing more than a quiet evening and a warm meal. But what she didn't expect was the chilling disrespect that awaited her. The whispers started immediately. The sneers followed. Then the manager approached, his voice dripping with condescension. In front of a packed room, they humiliated her in a way that no soldier should ever experience, let alone someone who had risked her life for her country. What happened next, though? Well, no one in that room was ready for her response. What she did for revenge sent shockwaves through the entire city. Sergeant Leah Harris had seen the worst of humanity. After serving 2 tours in Afghanistan, the 35-year-old veteran had returned to her hometown of Atlanta, Georgia, hoping to rebuild her life. The battlefield had taken its toll, mentally and physically. Leah had lost friends, seen destruction up close, and carried the weight of those memories every day. Though the scars of war were etched into her soul, she remained fiercely proud of her service and the uniform she wore. It wasn't just about the medals on her chest. It was about the promise she had made to protect her country and its people. But as she would soon find out, not everyone in her country felt the same sense of duty towards her. It was a chilly Friday evening when Leah decided to treat herself to dinner at a popular steakhouse in the upscale Buckhead district, a place renowned for its southern hospitality and high-end dining experience. The smell of sizzling steaks and buttered rolls filled the air as Leah entered, her military uniform adorned with the medals that told the story of her bravery. As she crossed the threshold, heads turned, and at first, she thought it was out of respect for her service. But as the whispers grew louder, something else became painfully clear. She wasn't being admired. She was being judged. What's she doing here? I bet she can't even afford a glass of water, let alone a meal. Leah's stomach twisted as she overheard the hushed but unmistakable snide comments. Still, she tried to shake it off. She had faced far worse in the heat of battle. But this was different. This was home. The battlefield was supposed to be behind her. Ignoring the murmurs, she approached the hostess stand, her hopes still intact. But the look she received from the hostess, cold, disinterested, made her gut tighten. The hostess, a young woman with perfect hair and a plastic smile, barely glanced up from her reservation book. "We don't have any tables available tonight," she said flatly. Leah's eyes swept across the room, taking in the half-empty dining area. Booths and tables stood empty, directly contradicting the words coming from the hostess's mouth. "But I can see there are plenty of open tables," Leah said calmly, her tone unwavering, though the sting of rejection was starting to settle in. The hostess didn't bother hiding her disdain. "We're fully booked," she replied, her voice dripping with indifference. Leah could feel the eyes of the other diners on her now. She felt small. She felt humiliated. But just as she was about to turn and leave, the restaurant's manager, a tall man with a smug expression and an air of superiority, stepped forward. His presence was commanding, but his words cut deep. "Miss, I'm afraid you're not the right fit for this establishment." Leah's blood boiled. "Excuse me?" she asked, her voice steady despite the rage building within her. The manager's eyes flicked dismissively over her uniform, his expression hardening. "We have certain standards here. You might be more comfortable at a different restaurant, one that suits your kind better." Her kind. The words struck like a slap in the face. Leah felt the weight of every eye in the restaurant on her, the collective judgment, the sneers, the silent support for the manager's cruel dismissal. She had been trained to stand tall, even in the worst situations, but this was a different kind of battle. Without a word, Leah turned and walked out of the restaurant, her fists clenched at her sides. But this was far from over. What she planned next would change everything. Leah knew that creating a scene in the restaurant wouldn't change anything. Instead, she would hit back where it would hurt the most, in the court of public opinion. That night, after calming her simmering anger, Leah took to social media. She crafted a detailed post on Twitter, recounting the events of her humiliation and tagging the restaurant's official account. She included pictures of a half-empty dining room she had been denied, the smug face of the manager, and a picture of herself in uniform, standing in the cold outside the restaurant. Her post wasn't just a rant, it was a call to action. Leah's words were powerful, raw, and full of the emotion she had suppressed inside the restaurant. "This is what it feels like to serve your country, only to come home and be told you don't belong. This is what real discrimination looks like in 2024. The post exploded overnight. Thousands of retweets, comments, and likes poured in, and her story quickly spread across social media. Veterans from all over the country joined the conversation, sharing their own stories of mistreatment and rallying behind Leah. Civil rights activists, community leaders, and even celebrities began to speak out, condemning the restaurant for its behavior. Leah's phone buzzed constantly with notifications, but she didn't stop there. She reached out to her local news station in Atlanta, and soon, Leah's story was featured in primetime broadcasts. Her face was on every television in the city, her voice ringing out as she recounted the discrimination she faced. She wasn't just speaking for herself anymore. She was speaking for every veteran, every person who had ever been told they weren't good enough because of the color of their skin or the clothes they wore. The protests outside the restaurant began 2 days later. Leah, along with hundreds of veterans, civil rights activists, and Atlanta residents, stood in solidarity outside the steakhouse, holding signs and chanting for justice. The sight of uniformed veterans standing tall in the face of discrimination sent a powerful message. News outlets swarmed the scene, and soon the restaurant's reputation was in tatters. But Leah wasn't finished. She filed a lawsuit against the restaurant for racial discrimination and mistreatment of a veteran. The case made headlines across the nation, and the restaurant's management was forced to issue a public apology. Still, Leah didn't want their hollow words. She wanted action. When the settlement money came in, Leah used every penny to establish HonorBound, a non-profit organization dedicated to helping veterans who had experienced discrimination. The foundation quickly grew into a national movement, offering legal aid and advocacy for veterans from coast to coast. What started as one woman's act of revenge had now become a force for change that no one could ignore. The restaurant, once a beloved establishment in Buckhead, never recovered. Within months, its doors were shuttered, a for lease sign hanging in the window, a testament to the power of public accountability. Leah Harris had been humiliated in the very country she had served, but instead of letting that moment define her, she transformed it into something far greater than herself. Her story became a beacon of hope and strength for others, a reminder that standing up in the face of injustice can change the world, even if it starts with one small act. What began as a moment of quiet humiliation turned into a national conversation. Leah's refusal to accept defeat, her ability to channel her pain into meaningful change, resonated with people across the country. The HonorBound Foundation not only helped veterans, but also raised awareness about the daily struggles many face after returning home. In the end, Leah's revenge wasn't about tearing down a restaurant. It was about building something bigger, something that would last. For those who doubted her, they learned an important lesson. You may silence someone in the moment, but you can never silence the truth. And Leah Harris made sure the world would never forget hers. She had been a soldier on the battlefield, but now, she was a warrior for justice, and her fight was far from over. Do you think a war veteran deserves such treatment? Let me know in the comments, and if you have a little time, subscribe. If you don't, that's up to you, but it's free.